situation? How was this situation going on when Martin O'Malley was mayor of Baltimore City? These are logical questions that may explain violence not only inside the prison, but outside the prison.
Yes.
May explain not only pregnancy rates inside the prison, but pregnancy rates outside the prison, or pregnancy rates in the State House. There's a lot of things that have to be discussed in this. And we have to demand, but it just seems that when investigations involve our community, because we either lack the expertise or we lack the courage to ask the right questions.
It's a combination
then
of that
they're
and more.
reduced to this small segment of correctional officers and indictments. And you said this before, even when we were looking at the kickback scandal with the Baltimore City Police Department. That thing need to be wider. Because it ain't just a kickback of 17 or 21 officers. We need to know more, but only when it involves our community are those investigations reduced to a small segment of time with a small segment of people. When it's a larger investigation, whether it's Boston or other places, then the right people, whether they get the right answers or not, because I'm not sure we've got all the right answers there. But we at least, people begin to ask questions about 10, 20 years ago.
Yes, it's a must. Well, we're going to do this. We're going to open up the lines, take your questions for Dr. Powers, 410-761-1592. But ultimately, who bears the responsibility? As I've yet to hear the governor say he takes responsibility, or Public Safety Secretary Gary Maynard to say he bears responsibility, but who ultimately bears the responsibility?
It has to go. It has to go to the governor. It absolutely has to go to the governor. It absolutely has to. Now the governor can go around and say, "Well, okay, yeah, the buck stops at me now. All these other people were complicit in that." But it has to go to the, I mean, it's just logical. And the state, and this institution is a state-run institution, like Baltimore City Police Department is a state-run institution. It has to go to the governor. You can't, if the prison system if the Baltimore City Jail, the prison system was deemed the number one correctional system because of the lowest recidivism rate in the country, the governor would be out giving speeches about how he is the governor of a state that has the best correctional system in the world. So when you have corruption in the system, the same thing has to take place. It's logical. It's common sense.
Yes, clearly. And before we go to the line, any thoughts, comments? Because I'm going to get into this story tomorrow regarding Dr. Andre Alonso. Short tenure, and of course, I always remember, as you would always so eloquently say, when many of these new officials would arrive with so much pomp and circumstances, and you would always say, rent, do not buy when it comes to that home. You know what I mean? Because your initials may be NFL, not for long. Any thoughts and comments on Dr. Alonso? Because I'm going to get into this tomorrow.
And I know you're going to get into this tomorrow, but let me just say something. Baltimore City is a city that I can honestly say, having worked with the Children First movement, where it almost hates its children. I mean, and the people, the things that we allow, whatever public official to come in, it's a cesspool of people. Don't tell me about loving children. Don't tell. It's a cesspool of people that actually hate the children no matter what come out of their mouth. And until we get a CEO of the Baltimore City school system, when Alonso came in here, I met with him and I said, look at, because I had traveled to Cuba, and look at they got a 99% literacy rate in the midst of poverty. And I told you, one of the public officials told me down there, when one of the officials from the United States, I asked him, they said, how do you have so much poverty and your literacy rate is so high? The Cuban official looked at us and said, what? He said, we don't associate material wealth with mental capability. He said, you convince the people in the United States that if they're poor, they have to be dumb. He said, we don't necessarily do that here. So until we're able, and I know you're going to get deeper into this in detail, because the reasons we've been given for the resignation makes no sense whatsoever. Until we fix that, then we're going to continue to bring people in that actually hate, and I don't mean don't help the children. I mean actually hate the children.
Yes, sir. With that, we'll come to the lines. Questions for Dr. Powers, and then I'm going to ask you about the United States government putting out on the FBI's top 10 list last week our sister Assata Shakur. At a time we see people like Bill Ayers and his wife Bernadine Dorn, that was with the Weathers Underground, still walking around free like they've never committed any crimes in this country. But with that, let me come to the lines. 410-761-1592. Good afternoon, caller. You're on the State of the City. Question for Dr. Powers.
Hello.
Yes.
This is Marie. And
you have a question?
Nice speaking to both of you. I got a bunch of things here. I'm going to try to go fast.
Yes, please do if you got a bunch.
Pardon me?
Yeah, I said please do if you got a bunch.
I got a bunch.
Okay.
The here, maybe others too, are run like a plantation, especially Baltimore City.
Yes.
And from what's been going on, prisoners should be able to vote since O'Malley ignores the prisoners in jail.
Yes.
And I wonder if Mr. White, the one who said he runs the jail, will be put in a position of being assassinated in the future because he knows too much.
All right. Thank you,
I
Mama.
know he does. Something else here.
Wait a minute now. I got to stop at 3. I got to stop at 3. Otherwise, I'm going to listen to your show. All right? Thank you, Mama. With that, Doc, well, one of the things she did talk about, we'll probably start with the last verse. She talked about perhaps if they will seek to, again, assassinate or to murder Tavon White because he knows too much. And we've seen that in Baltimore City, where it's come out that the police department has had informants that's been working on the streets. And then when those informants were no longer, as we always say, they co-op you. And then when they finish, they co-drop you. So thoughts and comments on that?
Two ways I would handle that. First of all, to be honest with you, I don't think Tavon White know too much.
Right.
He know what they want him to know.
That's right.
And I do believe that in all of his alleged corruption, he too was a pawn in this particular game because he was allowed to do what you were allowed to do. I mean, we have a prison system that can take a John Gotti and essentially make him non-void.
That's right.
In the prison system until he dies of cancer.
That's right.
So the reality of the matter is the things that Tavon White was able to accomplish.
Yes.
He was allowed to accomplish, and so the knowledge that he was able to gain, he was allowed to gain. So he don't know. He knows something, but he don't know too much because they're not going to allow him to make too much. He too. I know we try to give him a credit as a brilliant manipulator for getting 4 young ladies pregnant, but as most of us know, you don't have to be a brilliant manipulator.
They've been studying us since we came in this country down on the Eastern Shore, brother. You know that.
So I do think that they're going to move him, but I don't know if they would go that far with him because he's never going to get an opportunity to testify about this anyway. When did we hear from Eric Brown?
That's right.
Eric Brown was the first person accused of being head of the Black Guerrilla family, bringing phones into the system, bringing guns into the system.
Right.
Where's the testimony for Eric Brown? He's still alive. He's still in prison. He got 10 more years.
Right.
But where's the testimony from Eric Brown? So they know that despite they're giving him credit for being brilliant gang leaders, they only know. That's why we have to have the hearings, because it's bigger than them.
Right. Yes, sir. Talk about how, before we go to the side of Shakur's stories, you've often said before how many have to understand that what some would call the underworld, how the underworld is able to, at least in the white society, rise to become, of course, in political power. When we look at O'Malley, he comes out of the Irish Catholic mob. When we look at some of the Sarbanes, they come out of the Greek mob. When we look at Mikulski, she comes out of the Polish mob. We know for years that Schaefer was of course supported by Jack Pollock, Irv Colvin, and the Jewish mob. Talk about how they're able to take their money that they gained through illegal street numbers, through of course prohibition and the selling of moving of drugs and the moving of alcohol, clean that money up, invest in property, and take what many would call bad money, make it good money, dirty money, make it clean money. But then when it comes to our people, they only want to select few that can do that, such as a Mr. Willie Adams and others. But these young people can never do that. Or they offer us up a Kwesi Mfume, who they know was a 2-bit thug gangster, slinging on Pennsylvania Avenue, working for the likes of Colonel Watkins and others. But he was allowed to clean up, along with Sheila Dixon, and then he becomes congressman. So what does that say to our young people? Again, showing you that they can think outside the box and act outside the box when we look at, again, becoming ultimately potential revolutionaries after coming out of that world. So thoughts and
that takes us right back to the what we started with, Brother Dan, with the foundation of the Black Guerrilla family. And I hope more people will study this. The philosophy was, George Jackson said that the first rebellion of youth against society, against racism, is crime. That's their first act of crime is actually rebellion. Right. And the objective was to take that act of rebellion and turn it into something positive.
That's right.
And in the midst of that is revolution. That's a philosophy that he had. That's why I'm saying do not allow them to completely throw the Black Guerrilla family and the Black Book away and the philosophy of that away, because there's some good stuff at the foundation of that. But if they destroy them as completely a corrupt organization, this gang, this group of thugs and all, then you will miss that message that George Jackson, one of the starters of it, said that the first act of rebellion for a black youth is crime. But that doesn't have to be their last act. You can take a criminal and turn them into a revolutionary understanding that that's their first act.
Right.
When the Irish, when the Italians, when the Jewish people get involved in crime, their plan is to go from crime,
Right.
from gang behavior to group behavior to organized crime
That's
to
right.
legitimization.
Yeah.
They have a path to that. As you know, and I won't go into it too deeply here, we've tried to engage young people. That's what I've been doing. I've been off the air. We got a search and rescue program now. We're trying to engage young people outside of the spotlight of the media and to show them how to go from where you are to where you need to be, how that process particularly works. Now, when black people start doing it en masse, they begin to come up with money laundering laws, saying you can't turn bad money into good money. That's cleaning the money up and laundering it. If it's bad, you got to stay bad. Now, think
Right.
about the philosophy of this law. You can't turn bad money into good money. So it has to stay bad money. So you
Right.
have to stay involved in crime and
Right.
criminal behavior.
Yeah.
By law,
Right.
we want you to stay involved in crime. You can't turn that around.
That's
But as
right.
you mentioned, there's all of the other communities
Right.
start with crime, evolve to legitimacy.
That's right.
We need to teach our young people that,
Right.
because if their first act of crime is rebellion, then we need to take that rebellion and turn it into something positive. Then we need to identify the people who've gone the other way, who've taken this concept of crime, legitimize themselves, and now criticize the people who are
Right.
starting where they started as simply street thugs.
That's
But we
right.
have to teach that. I don't know why that's not a part of the curriculum.
That's
This
right.
is why I'm talking about a good CEO in the bottom of your social studies class.
That's right.
To teach that so young people will know that you can't pass crime on, but you can
Right.
pass wealth on
That's
that
right.
started with crime,
That's right.
became legitimized. Now I can pass that on to the next generation. If I'm just a criminal or a gang member,
Right.
I can't pass gang membership on
That's
to
right.
my children. But if I go from a gang member to legitimize myself,
Right.
then I can pass the wealth from that on to other people in the community. That is the philosophy of the Black Guerrilla family that they will never allow
Right.
us to understand, because as they look at this corruption situation, the whole mindset is destroy
Right.
the concept of
Right.
what the Black Guerrilla family was in the beginning. We
That's
want
right.
to destroy the systemic corruption from the governor's office on the
Right.
way down,
That's
but
right.
we want to keep the parts of BG. Tavon
Right.
is not George Jackson.
That's right.
Eric Brown is not George Jackson.
Right.
So let's talk about Tavon White instead of the Black Guerrilla family and its
right.
beginning philosophy,
Right.
so that people can go back and read George Jackson, Blood in My Eye.
That's right.
Because you won't even want to touch that book
That's
if
right.
we keep allowing them to say the Black Guerrilla family is just a drug dealing,
Right.
promiscuous group that go out and sex up black women in
Right.
prison.
Right.
We've got to separate the two.
That's right.
We've got to deal with the people who are responsible for the systemic problem of turning prisons into factories that can produce more criminals,
Right.
and separate that from the foundation of the Black Guerrilla family, because that's what they've done in every one of their community. Thomas Jefferson
Yes.
was a man that enslaved his own damn children.
That's
How
right.
wicked. And he's got a monument in Washington, D.C.
right.
So the whites of this country didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. How wicked can you
That's
be?
right.
Talking about Adolf Hitler.
That's right.
How wicked must you be to produce children?
Right.
And everybody out there who's got a child.
Right.
Imagine producing a child and then sending them into slavery
Hmm.
and then going back and raping your own. That's pedophilia.
That's right.
And so what I'm saying is that we have to look and learn this evolutionary process so that we can take these young people and change their behavior
So
without
much.
throwing them away. And again, that's what we've, people say, well, Doc, you haven't been on the air, you haven't done, but we've been doing the work. And I think
Yes, sir.
I've been telling you, I can the search and rescue mission. We go
Right.
out and find young people who we sit down and talk with and say, we know you are here. Now we're going to rescue you and take you to where you need to be outside of the public view. Because once
That's
you
right.
put it in the public view,
Right.
you're going to have it like
Right.
you have it in the Baltimore City. Once they know you're trying to fix young, as
Right.
I told Justin Fenton, who are you as a Baltimore
That's
City
right.
reporter to tell me how to intervene
Right.
with my people to
Right.
change their behavior?
Right.
Well, I'm thinking that you all are naive because you're engaging with these gang. Who are you to tell
Right.
me how to? You just got a journalism degree
That's right.
and a job at the Sun, and you're going to give us the strategy
A
of
neophyte.
dealing with our people.
Right.
Don't tell us how to deal with a Tavon White.
That's
We
right.
got a plan for that. We
That's
know
right.
how to deal with that.
Right.
But part of it is that hearing
Right.
that we've allowed the governor, with
Right.
the help of some black
That's right.
politicians.
That's right. That's right.
Let's be honest
Right,
now.
right,
It
right.
wasn't just the
Right.
whites. Some black
That's right.
politicians to squelch and push back.
Right. We have to. Well, let's, while we're waiting for some of the other callers, but I'm sure many of them are just listening, so they don't want to get in and they don't want to interrupt this conversation that we're having, because again, goes back to black radio and black media, absent from having these kind of conversations.
Absolutely
Outside
right.
of this show, very few really want to talk about this and don't want to really talk about the real